Hello everyone, this is Philosophy 72, week 4. Right, we are doing Leibniz, the second class on Leibniz. Last week, week 3, we finished Descartes and started Leibniz from a discourse on metaphysics, right? So let me again review what we had done so far. Week 1, we saw the painting of the pipe by René Magritte, right? This is not a pipe. We spoke about that, and also we also did a few pages from Antonio Gramsci from the prison notebooks, right? Selections from the prison notebooks on the question of studying philosophy, the study of philosophy. Then we started Descartes week 2. We did especially focus on meditation 2, and then week 3 we finished with Descartes. We started Leibniz. This difficult dense text, I ask you to read only the first 13 sections of discourse on metaphysics. Remember, metaphysics is a central word for us. Meta is beyond, after, that's the prefix in Greek, right, meaning beyond or after. Meta, physics, right? I don't want to go too deep into that. Everything physical, material, and so on and so forth. So the science of that which goes beyond the physical, the tangible, the visible, and so on and so forth. That's what metaphysics, or remember, ontology, also the science of a being, on being, that which is, the study of that which is. Metaphysics, the same, the study of reality, that which is not only reality but the essence, so to speak, of reality. Not only what seems to be the case, not only the appearance, but the essence, and so on and so forth. Okay, we spoke about this. The book by Descartes, Meditations on First Philosophy. I told you the first philosophy is also another expression for metaphysics, and the title of the Leibniz this time is includes the word discourse on metaphysics. So we saw last time we began with in section 1 I told you that there are these remarks on the question of perfection, right? Everything is perfect its own way for Leibniz, differently from Descartes, right? And we are used to that type of thinking. God is perfect, we are imperfect, and so on and so forth. Leibniz says no, everything is perfect the way it is. Yes, God is a greater perfection for sure, including all other perfections, but everything is perfect, which is something that in a somewhat different way we will find in Spinoza, the philosopher that we do next time. Okay, Spinoza and Leibniz has some similarities, then also important differences, but in any case, perfection, everything is perfect. So we went from that into the question of the ordinary and the extraordinary. And remember that I told you, in section 6, right? Leibniz says, that's for you on page 3, right? That nothing is extraordinary, right? God's wishes or actions are usually divided into, I'm reading, the ordinary and the extraordinary, but we should bear in mind that God does nothing that isn't orderly. So everything is orderly. Maybe I can find something strange, something unusual, because I'm not used to it, because I don't understand it. But that doesn't mean that it is disorderly, extraordinary. Ultimately, if you apply this to so many, this is very fruitful, actually, right? Nothing is to use, I don't know, sociological, psychological language, think about the idea of the deviant, right? Or the abnormal. Nothing is like that. Everything is okay the way it is. Everything is perfect. And that is the same for Leibniz. I can't go into that. I sent you another video last time. The question of the world. This is the best possible world, right? And he says that at one point, right, precisely at the end of section 6, between page 3 and then 4, so one can say that no matter, I'm reading, how God had created the world, because Leibniz believes that there is an infinite possible number of possible worlds. This is the perfect. And some people, like Voltaire, another philosopher, made fun of Leibniz because of this, considering all, like the natural disasters, the evils, and so on and so forth. How can this be perfect? It is the best. It is the best. It would have been regular, and in whatever world God had decided to create, it would be regular, and would have been regular and orderly. But God chose the most perfect, the best, the most perfect order, according to Leibniz, I'm reading, and that is, and he explains what he means by that. What is this most perfect order that we have in the world for Leibniz? It is the order that is, I'm reading, at once simplest in general rules and richest in phenomena. That's what Leibniz means by the best possible world, okay? Richest in phenomena, simplest to explain, okay, in general rules. Okay, so, but then he ends this section with this nice remark, but I don't, I'm reading, claim that they explain the great mystery of a creation, right, on which the whole universe depends. In any case, so we had to move on because today I want to focus especially, and you will see the journal for today entry, the journal entry is on the question of contingency and the distinction between contingency and necessity. I want to focus on that, and also on the concept of certainty. That I say now, I will repeat, certainty, right? I'm sure that something will happen, I'm certain of it, and so on and so. Certainty is, bear this in mind, a kind of a contingency and not necessity, although we usually often confuse certainty with necessity. We believe that certainty is like necessity, that something certain is something necessary, but it isn't. It is contingent. Now, let me say this now. Contingency, which is a word with which we may be less familiar, but it's very important in philosophy. Contingency is that which can be and also not be. Right? Necessity is the opposite. Necessity is that which must be. It must be this way, right? So any living organism must die. That's death is, the utmost, if you will, necessity, right? No one can say I don't want to die. I mean, people can say I don't want to die, but everybody will, and every living organism, any form of life, okay? Contingency is precisely, that which is up to us in a sense, or the event that may happen may also not happen, right? Anything, I'm speaking right now, it's up to me to speak and not speak. I can also choose not to speak. I can also choose to stop right here making this video, okay? That I'm doing this contingently. All right, so I hope that this distinction is very clear from the outset. Now, certainty, when something happens, we say something will happen for sure. It looks like a necessity, but it is not. It is a contingency. Let me explain right now because I don't want to be too long. So, but what is certainty after all? It is when not only what is possible, something can be, but even what is probable, something might be, gets to the utmost degree. Okay, probability, think about this, 30, 40, 50, and so on percent, 70, 80, 90%, right? I mean, we know today even the weather forecast tells us, right, about whether it rains, it might rain, and the percentage of it, and so on, right? So when this percentage, right, this probability that something might happen gets to the utmost, right, 95, 97, 90, 99, 100%, then probability changes to certainty. That's what certainty is. Okay, will is only the completion of the word will, something will happen, is only the bringing to completion of a may or might. Something may happen, might happen. And remember, the may or might, right, probability, that they rest on can or could. Something can happen. Of course, can is the most important, if you will, the most basic model, right? Even, in order for something to be, that means that it has to be able to be, right? To be able to be is the most basic modality. I speak right now, I'm speaking because I can speak. If I couldn't speak, I wouldn't speak, right? So can, the something can, possibility is the most basic modality of a reality, okay? And then on top of that, we have a probability. Yes, something may happen, it may also not happen, may or might. And then I am now repeating, because of the importance of this, when this probability gets so high, to the utmost degree, 99.9%, 100, it will happen. And then there is no going back, right? But that doesn't mean that it happens necessarily, that it must happen. No. I mean, that means that before that time in which, right, probability changed to certainty, before the time that we got to 100% of a probability, whatever event happened, right, it could also not have happened, right? I mean, think about an accident until the end. At one point, there is no return, there is no way to avoid even a traffic car accident. But until that time, there are many things that people can do, the drivers can do, right, to avoid the accident, right? Something happens, but there is a time in which it could also not happen. This is contingency. So when then it happens, then there is no going back. Now, it will certainly be this way, right? I mean, I'm sure, right? I mean, then there is a degree of precisely certainty. Things cannot go back. But that doesn't mean, I repeat, that it was necessary, that it was meant to be. No, it was not meant to be, right? So I hope that you appreciate the difference between certainty as a type of contingency, and therefore the difference between these two big categories, let's say modalities: contingency, which names that which can be and can also not be, can happen and can also not happen, and necessity, which names that which is meant to be the way it is, that needs to happen, must happen, has to happen. Okay, necessity, contingency. Certainty is a type of contingency. And I know that I went through many of the other sections, that they are in any case highlighted, but last time we spoke also about section 8 and Alexander the Great, the example, the question of thisness, singularity, very important, the same as perfection, or the notion of the individual substance. That's what singularity is. The idea we didn't say last time, I say now, that there are that not right, that's on section 9, that two substances, two things, two realities are never exactly the same. But I said this last time, even when they look exactly the same, two drops of water, each one is different, ultimately different from the other, okay? So, and in this sense, identity and difference are the same. But now I'm focusing on section 13, and I end there, right? That's what I was, what I said about, you will remember now, necessity and contingency, two separate opposites, in a sense, modalities, and certainty as part of contingency, right? So this creates a problem for Leibniz, very interesting problem, and I ask you to write about that in your discussion board entry about the question of the so-called free will, the freedom of the will, and also in the journal, whether you agree, disagree with Leibniz, and so on, the question of freedom, precisely because, right, I mean, he is here making sure that he is not misunderstood, that when he speaks of certainty, he says, I'm not speaking about necessity, because otherwise I would be speaking about fate, 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 destiny, predestination. That something happens because it is meant to happen that way and there is no other way around. No, that is not the case, because otherwise he says this would destroy, and that's the problem that you find there very interesting, human freedom. That's the point that he's making. So I'm reading from page 7. I have said that the notion of an individual substance, remember the example of Alexander the Great, what makes Alexander the Great? Alexander the Great, a king but different from all other kings, a person but different from all other people. So that's the notion of an individual substance that you will remember. The notion of an individual substance includes everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen to an individual substance, a reality, an entity, a singularity, and it also includes traces of the whole universe within it, and it's a reflection even of the universe and of God. God also reflected, and so it is an expression of that. Okay, we'll go back to the question of expression with Spinoza. It's the same and yet completely different. Each individual substance, each singularity, each thisness is this and not that, right? So that's the point, although there is also something in common, right? Let's put it this way, like a common denominator, right? I mean, it is let's put it this way, it is a different expression of the same. Any different person, any different individual is still a human being. Humanness, humanity belongs in all human beings. But each human being is different from the other, from all others. And I mean, just to make this, to give an example. I go back to the text because I want to start wrapping this up. I have said that the notion of an individual substance involves, once and for all, I just said this, everything that can ever happen to it, and that by looking into that notion, the blueprint, one can see in it everything that will ever be truly sayable, that we can say, the predicates of the substance. If we were able to look into the notion of whatever, this book, we would know the whole, life, so to speak, existence of the book from its production to its destruction. If you were able to look into the notion of what I am, you would be able to see everything that has happened, is happening, will happen to me, that I have done, I'm doing, I will do, and so on and so forth. I mean, of course, Leibniz says, as a Christian philosopher, that God has this capacity, but we don't. Okay, so in any case, that's beyond that, right? Everything that we can say about something that belongs in the notion, and even, like I said, the history of the universe, everything that has happened in the universe, and also the reflection of God. I continue the reading, but this seems, and that's the problem, that's the really, important problem, metaphysical, right? A problem of metaphysics, but also of ethics, because it has to do with freedom. This seems to destroy the difference between contingent and necessary truths, contingency and necessity, to rule out, I'm reading, human freedom. That's the problem. And to imply that all the events in the world, including our actions, are governed by an absolute fate, Fate, right? That there is no way, everything I do is already, it would already be predetermined, right? But this is not the case, because otherwise I wouldn't be free to choose between doing, not only choose between A, B, C, D, so many options that I can do so many actions, but also fundamentally I wouldn't be able to choose between doing and not doing something, right? I would be completely determined. And in philosophy, there is a long, I don't want to go into that tradition, a question of whether we are determined in our actions and to what degree. There are those who claim that there is this kind of strict and absolute determination, which is a big, too extreme, and those who say that everything is completely up to us, so called, right? This concept of the free will, right? So called, that parenthetically, we don't need even to say free will, because the will is free, so to by default, so to speak. I mean, the will is the faculty whereby precisely we make choices, or we have a preference. We prefer, before we get into the question of willing and wanting something, we prefer this or that, and so on and so forth. In any case, the question of freedom: are we free? Are we not free? To what extent? And so on and so forth. Think about this very interesting question that you have started already writing on last week. Okay, but this is Leibniz on reply. To this, I reply, I'm reading, that we have to distinguish what is certain from what is necessary. Certainty, necessity, they are not the same. I said that already. Certainty is actually a type of a contingency. So let's distinguish this. He continues, I'm reading, everyone agrees that future contingents are assured, right, that are certain, because, okay, God foresees them, but we don't infer from this that they are necessary. Again, God, has this vision, right? He's able to see everything that will happen in the universe, everything that people will do, but that doesn't mean that God enters, so to speak, the picture, and that he intervenes and determines things one way or the other. No, I mean, so Leibniz is keeping, he's saving, so to speak, human freedom, right? Freedom in human action, to a relative degree, of course, right? Because we are conditioned by things, determined by what we had done before, right? I get to a point in which then, like I said before, the probability that something might happen gets so high that then it will happen, right? So there is a degree of determination. It's not that everything is up to me in the most, trivial sense, that I can do as I please every time. No, I do things on the basis of precisely what I had done before, what has happened before, and so on and so forth. But there is a degree of choice. That's what, Leibniz is saving, so to speak, and this is precisely what he means by saying that even when something happens with certainty, it is still contingent, meaning that there was a time in which it could also not happen, or rather, it could also not have happened. Okay, then once I make my decision, my preference, when I then act, I cannot go back, right? But that doesn't mean that the opposite. That's the question of, I can go into that, but you will see on the right column, very interesting, the distinction, that's very important actually, between between what involves and what does not involve a contradiction. Necessary means that the opposite cannot happen. The opposite is not possible. If something happens by necessity, and he gives the example of a, you know, geometry and the exact sciences. I mean, a necessary truth. The opposite is not possible. What's the opposite of 2 plus 2 equals 4? 2 plus 2 does not equal 4. Is that possible? No. So 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's right, a necessary truth. But that someone won the elections, right? That one candidate won the elections instead of the other. That doesn't mean that the opposite was not possible. Let's say even the last presidential elections, right, when Trump won, at least, and Clinton lost. I mean, Clinton won the popular, but beyond the point, beyond that, okay? So that doesn't mean that the opposite was not possible at all. There was a time in which things could have shaped up differently, right? Things could have gone in a different direction, right? I mean, things that had to do with human action, human history. Of course, there is always the possibility that something might be the case and something might also not be the case. Then at one point it will happen with certainty. There is no going back, but that doesn't mean that it is necessary, okay? I hope that this is clear. In our most, even daily actions and choices, let's say that last night I had, right, the option to go out and have dinner with friends, right? I mean, of course, it was an option. I could have gone, I could also not have gone. It was up to me, so to speak. I decided not to go, for example, because I had work to do, right? So I didn't go. But that doesn't mean that there was a time in which, right, the option to go and not go was not there. It was there. So I didn't go. That was my choice. And that was a contingent thing. Now, at one point, certainly I did not go. Right now, I can say that certainly I didn't go, and I can't go now. Last night, right? I can't go back in time. Or if I went, same idea. If I had decided to go rather than not, right? Again, it would have been a different action, but the option that I had, the option that we always have, right, is in the realm of contingency. That's the point, and not necessity, right? Because if I do something because I must, because I'm forced by the law, or a gunpoint by someone, or because of nature, like I said, a living organism must die, then of course there is no contingency whatsoever, there is no freedom. Of course there is a necessity. Of course we have the necessary truths. I repeat, like I said 2 plus 2 equals 4. The opposite is a contradiction. But the opposite of Trump won the election 4 years ago is not a contradiction. The opposite of I went to the movies last night is not a contradiction. I mean, in real existence, then I didn't do that, but I could have done it. Okay, so it's almost 30 minutes. I want to wrap it up here. Make sure that you do write your journal entry, discussion board entry. Contact me with questions if you have any. Next time we'll do Spinoza. Thank you. Bye.